Hi, it's Mitch from PickDawgz.com. Sunday, June the 30th, 2024. We're doing our first 5 innings picks for today. 15 Major League Baseball games on the card, mostly afternoon action on a Sunday as is normal, but we'll cover, like I said, every single game. Of course, we also cover today in sports history. Today in sports history, in 2020, it was Lionel Messi scoring his 700th career goal. Of course, 2020, not a great year for a lot of us, but it was for Messi as he got that goal in. Of course, we're going to score big today against the books, and we're going to even do it before these games even finish as we cover it all in the first 5 innings. All right, let's get to the action and start beating up on the books. For our first game, we head to Atlanta, who has an 11:30 a.m. Eastern time start. Hopefully you catch this video before that game. Schwellenbach on the mound for the Braves. It's Bailey Falter on the mound for the Pirates. Falter, starting to regress to the numbers that we expected to see from him. A 4 ERA on the season, up to 5.40 over his last 3 starts. Meanwhile, Schwellenbach starting to improve his 5.40 ERA on the season down to 3.71 over his last 3 starts. The Braves certainly not the team that many expected them to be, but the year they won the World Series, they did it all in the second half of the season. We look at the way these teams are hitting the baseball, particularly against the hand of the pitcher that they're facing. And when it comes to hitting righties, the Pirates just 198 over their last 10 games. In fact, the Pirates' bats have gone stale over the last 10. They're only hitting 185 versus lefties. But the Braves crushing lefties at 286 over their last 10 games. I think they get the Falter here as well. We'll take the Braves to get the day started right in the first 5. For our next game, we head to Philadelphia, where the Phillies are taking on the Marlins. A lot of people writing off the Marlins completely after that lousy start to the season. We've kind of hung with them to a certain degree, and in this series, we've been taking them plus a 1.5 in the prior games, and that has served us well as the games have been tight early, and the Marlins actually getting it done late. Today, the Phillies send their top pitcher for the season so far, Ranger Suarez, who has a 1.83 ERA, 1.93 over his last 3 starts, while the Marlins seem to have reinvigorated Yonny Chirinos, who really has had a horrible career, but this year so far with Miami, 2.70 ERA, and he has looked pretty sharp out there on the mound. Once again, big odds permit for, a little more generous plays for us. And we look at the way these teams are hitting the baseball. The Marlins just 188 versus lefties, and the Phillies 259 versus righties over their last 10 games. But you know what? That hasn't mattered in this series at all. I'm going to stick with the Marlins plus a 1.5. It served us well. Let's ride it one more time for the first 5 innings. For our next game, we head to Fenway Park, where the Red Sox are taking on the Padres. It's been all Padres in this series. I'm a little bit surprised, especially against Houck on Saturday. But today, the Red Sox go with Winckowski up against Matt Waldron for the Padres. Winckowski is a reliever, so he's only going to go 2-3 innings. That's all he generally goes in these games. Meanwhile, Waldron, a big surprise for the Padres, coming in with a 3.43 ERA in the season and 2.25 over his last 3 starts. Winckowski has been strong, 3.26 ERA on the season, 1.69 over his last 3, but you have to remember, like I said, very limited innings. The Padres are absolutely crushing the baseball right now, 315 over their last 10 games from the right side of the plate, while the Red Sox 242 over their last 10 versus righties. Over the course of the season, the Red Sox have not been a great home team, and while often you see the home team dig in their heels and try and avoid the sweep, I don't think it happens. I'm going to take the Padres in the first 5 of this game. For our next game, we head to Toronto, where the Blue Jays are taking on the Yankees. The Yankees got the win on Friday, but Saturday it was back to losing for them, as it has been a very rough patch for the Bronx Bombers. Meanwhile, the Blue Jays look like they're putting it together, but overall the record still 6 games below 500 coming into this game. Kevin Gausman gets the ball here for for the Jays, it's Garrett Cole on the mound for the Yankees. And after a decent first outing of the year for Cole, coming off the injured list, well, it was bombs away in his second start. Now he has a 9 ERA. Of course, that's like beginning of the season ERAs for pitchers. Meanwhile, Gausman comes in with a 4.26 ERA. That balloons to a 5.29 over his last 3 starts. Look at the way these teams are hitting right-handed pitching over their last 10 games, and the Blue Jays actually at 254 versus righties, the Yankees at 239, but the Yankees hitting averages haven't been that high all season. We know it's boom or bust with them with the long ball. I think we see plenty of runs in this game. I'm going to take the over in the Blue Jays-Yankees for the first 5. For our next game, we head to Citi Field where the Mets are taking on the Astros. After some horrendous officiating behind the plate on Friday night, the Astros' frustrations continued to build on Saturday as the calls continued to not go their way early. They turn that anger into production as they let the bats do the talking late and absolutely pounded the Mets into submission late in the game. Tonight, they go with Luis Severino for the Mets, and it's Sean Durbin on the mound for the Astros. The Astros continue to be frustrated, and I expect to see more of it behind the plate today with Severino, who does have some trouble finding the strike zone on a normal basis. He's got a 3.29 ERA on the season, 3.44 over his last 10, while Durbin has seen limited action with a 5.64 ERA. The Astros and Mets both hit right-handed pitching extremely well, but I just think the Astros lineup from top to bottom is just simply better than the Mets, and I think the bullpen is as well. I'm going to go with the Astros in the first 5 of this game. For our next game, we go to Tampa Bay where the Rays are taking on the Nationals. It's Taj Bradley on the bump for the Rays, and it's Patrick Corbin on the mound for the Nationals. Corbin has certainly pitched a lot better than what we've seen him pitch in recent years. He does have a 5.46 ERA for the season, but over his last 3 games, 2.60, while Bradley is dialing it in as well, a 3.81 ERA on the season, 1.47 over his last 3 starts. Bradley has dipped down in the home runs allowed department and really dialed in the strikeouts, and that's how he's gotten it done. We look at the way these teams are hitting, and we look at the Rays versus lefties, 324 versus left-handed pitching over the last 10 games. The Nationals at 259 versus right-handed pitching. This was one of the games on Saturday that really came up and bit us. We had a decent day overall, but not in this particular outing. But I do think the Rays, while they continue to not sweep series, they continue to win series, and I think they do so by starting it strong against Corbin. I'll take the Rays in the first 5. For our next game, we head to Chicago where the White Sox are taking on the Rockies. It's Garrett Crochet on the mound for the White Sox and Kyle Freeland on the mound for the Rockies. Since the White Sox got Robert back in the lineup, I'll tell you what, they have a little more pep in their step, and it's more than just a lot of good young pitchers on this team. We're starting to see the bats come around as well, so we know they're going nowhere after that slow start. Still just 24 wins on the season, but playing some solid baseball. Kyle Freeland was nothing short of outstanding, when we saw him in his last start. That 9.55 ERA for the season is 3.38 over his last 3. He allowed just 1 hit in the shutout performance last time. Crochet, this guy is just a strikeout machine. 3.05 ERA on the season, 1.93 over his last 3 starts. We look at the way these teams hit left-handed pitching, and the Rockies hit lefties significantly better at 247 over their last 10 versus 215 for the White Sox. And while the Rockies try to avoid the sweep, they never seem to be able to do that on the road. I'm going to roll with the White Sox in the first 5 of this game. For our next game, we go to Milwaukee where the Brewers are taking on the Cubs. It is Freddie Peralta on the bump for the Brewers and Kyle Hendricks on the mound for the Cubs. Hendricks was sent to the bullpen after a disappointing start to the season. He performed well in the pen, and since coming out of the pen, he has made 2 starts and pitched really well in both of those games. They were both against the San Francisco Giants, 1 at home and 1 on the road. Peralta, meanwhile, was seen at the top of the rotation earlier this season. He's kind of has looked tired at times, but he still has that kind of good stuff. 4.03 ERA for Peralta, 6.87 for Hendricks, and over the last three, 5.19 for Hendricks, 4.41 for Peralta. We look at the way these teams are hitting the baseball, particularly against right-handed pitching recently, and they're both clubbing righties. 270 for the Brewers and 254 for the Cubs. On Saturday's game, it just, even though it was tied a lot of the way, it just felt like the Cubs had the upper hand and were kind of dictating the pace the whole game. I think the Brewers flip it on them today and get the best of it. I'll take the Brewers in the first 5. For our next game, we head to Kansas City, where the Royals are taking on the Guardians. It's Seth Lugo on the bump for the Royals, and it is Logan Allen on the mound for the Guardians. Logan Allen is one of these guys with a big ERA, 5.72 over his last for the season, and 6.43 over his last 3 starts. While Lugo 2.29 for the season and 1.93 over his last 3 starts. When we look at, the win and loss and all that sort of stuff, man, does Logan Allen get a lot of run support. So he gives up a lot of runs, but man, do the Guardians seem to hit when he's on the bump. Just one of those things you can't really explain. You look at the way these teams are hitting, and, the Royals hitting a paltry 129 versus left-handed pitching, while the Guardians 236 versus righties. I think it really isn't a discussion. I think Lugo is the better pitcher of these two, but when your team's hitting 129 against lefties, it makes pitchers look even better than they are. I'm going to take the Guardians in the first 5 of this one. For our next game, we head to St. Louis, where the Reds are taking on the Cardinals. It was all Reds on Saturday, and I'll tell you, the way this series has gone, the 2 games that the Reds have won have been absolute blowouts. The Cardinals squeaked one by the Reds on Friday night, 1-0. When we look at Lance Lynn on the bump here for the Cardinals, 3.86 ERA on the season, 4.96 over his last 3 starts. Hunter Green, 3.79 ERA in the season, 4.70 over his last 3 starts, and Green generally seen as the better pitcher of these two. But the Cardinals have certain pitchers on their rotation that play certain teams really, really well, like Michaelis against the Cubs. He is a Cub killer, and what Lance Lynn is a Cincinnati Reds killer. 13-6, and the Cardinals are in his last 19 versus the Reds. I gotta say, the Cardinals, the bats have been pretty quiet in these losses, but they're hitting 261 over their last 10 versus righties. The Reds just 230. I'm going to roll with the Cardinals to even up the series and to win the first 5. For our next game, we head to San Francisco, where the Giants are hosting the Los Angeles Dodgers. Well, extra innings went extra long on Saturday night as a tie ball game turned into an absolute blowout as the Dodgers bats just really started to kick into gear. Probably just tired of striking out a bunch, and I think sometimes frustration leads to motivation, and we saw that with the Dodgers bats. The Dodgers go with James Paxton in this game. He's got a 3.39 ERA, 1.0 ERA over his last 3 starts, but we know Paxton, and a 1.0 ERA is not in his wheelhouse. Neither is 3.39, to be honest with you. But the Giants hitting just 232 versus lefties over their last 10 games. The Dodgers 246 versus righties, 247 versus lefties. I think that, we've seen in this series, the Giants have played some motivated baseball here against the Dodgers. And even after that deflating loss on Saturday, I expect them to come out here and jump all over Paxton. I'm going to take the Giants in the first 5 of this game. For our next game, we head to Los Angeles, where the Angels are taking on the Tigers. Angels have been absolutely red hot of late, while the Tigers, well, I think they might be done for the season at this point, the way that they are playing and just wilting out here in Los Angeles. Tyler Anderson on the bump here for the Angels. It's Casey Mize on the mound for the Tigers. Mize is definitely improving after that rough start. Of course, he missed all of last season and most of the season before that. He was a former #1 overall draft choice, and he has that sort of stuff in his arsenal. Just still on the road to recovery. I'm not too worried about him. Tyler Anderson having a career year, 2.63 ERA, and he has just continued to roll it with a 2.60 over his last 3 starts. Of course, the lefty going for the Angels, and the Tigers hitting 246 over their last 10 versus lefties. Angels 230 over their last 10 versus right-handed pitching. But I think sometimes, you can take all the numbers in the world and they don't make any sense. And I'll tell you what's happening right now, something I rarely ever say. Those Angels are just red hot. I'm taking the Angels in the first 5. For our next game, we head to Seattle, where the Mariners are taking on the Minnesota Twins. Luis Castillo on the mound for the Mariners, and Joe Ryan's on the mound for the Twins. Now, in these videos and in other videos that I do and everything, I talk about a lot of the relevant stats and some of the key numbers that I'm looking at when it comes to stats in the limited time I have to talk about it in the video that I'm doing. But most of you guys know I'm a game watcher. I have a wall full of TVs in my living room, so I see all the games. And one thing I have picked up on this season, I've mentioned it in my other videos, is Luis Castillo does not look like the same pitcher that we've seen in the past. He is usually one of these guys that battles it out, scraping the other team, scraping out a run or two, and it's good enough or not good enough. Generally a low ERA, low win total. He doesn't get the support. But this year he's been getting banged around. In fact, he's got a 6.06 ERA over his last 3 starts. Meanwhile, Joe Ryan for the Twins has been serviceable, and I think that's all you have to be with a team that's hitting the ball the way the Twins are. 245 versus right-handed pitching, and the Mariners just 182. This one belongs to the Twins. For our next game, we head to Arizona, where the Diamondbacks are taking on the A's. It's Brandon Pfaadt on the mound for the D-backs and Luis Medina on the mound for the A's. Low-scoring game on Saturday, and Brandon Pfaadt, though, hasn't been involved in that many low-scoring games. His 4.45 ERA on the season, 3.86 over his last 3 starts, while we look at Medina, 5.62 ERA on the season, 5.93 over his last 3 starts. The A's have had a lot of success in Arizona against the Diamondbacks, 8-3 in the last 11 meetings of these two teams, despite Saturday's loss. But Oakland just 13-38 in their last 51 games overall. We look at the way these teams are hitting the baseball, and both of them hitting exactly .213 versus right-handed pitching over their last 10 games. Diamondbacks slightly better, overall, but against lefties, man, the Diamondbacks really have been hammering it. But of course, not facing a lefty here. This is a little bit of a tougher game, but I'll just roll with the home team. I'm hating the price on this thing, but I'll take the D-backs. For our last game, we head to Baltimore, where the Orioles are hosting the Rangers. Boy, the Orioles trying to get a little bit of revenge for last year's playoff loss. Of course, the Rangers will exchange regular season losses for playoff wins any day of the week, as with any team out there. But the thing is that in Saturday's game, Corey Seager left the game for the Rangers and did not return. I'm not sure if he's playing in this game, and the Rangers are already banged up, severely coming into this, as they have been all season long. Cole Irvin gets the ball here for the Orioles in this one. We're starting to see him look like the old Cole Irvin with a 7.53 ERA over his last 3 starts. His ERA up to 3.74. While Andrew Heaney on the mound here for the Rangers, they've handled him really well. 4.17 ERA, 4.60, but they get him out of there in a hurry as soon as he gets into trouble. We look at the way these teams are hitting lefties, and the Rangers hitting lefties way better than they're hitting righties. The Orioles also hitting left-handed pitching extremely well at 318. I think we see an over in the first 5 of the Orioles-Rangers, and that'll be our final pick for today's show. That wraps up our first 5 innings video for today. Tomorrow's card, the lightest of the year, just 3 Major League Baseball games on there. Gives us time to do other things, a day to kind of catch up on stuff. But of course, we'll be back and we'll be doing that video. And of course, if you're looking for my best bets from the world's best handicappers, head on over to our website, PickDawgz.com. Just click on the Premium Picks tab. Of course, I've got a link in the description for that as well. I also have a link for merch, like this cool Nike zip-up dry fit jacket I'm wearing, like the hat I'm wearing, and like the shirts I wear in a lot of the videos. We also have new bobbleheads coming out in just a few weeks. This is Mitch. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate each and every one of you that tune into the PickDawgz channel, whether you smash the like button or you don't. We prefer it if you do, and if you want to, you could always subscribe to our channel. That's up to you as well. But anyways, have an awesome day. Let's crush the books today, and let's get it done early in the first 5 innings.